people, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, I want to talk today about the case of young 10-month-old Charlie Gard. This is the boy who was born in August of last year with a very rare condition, mitochondrial depletion syndrome. It's damaged his brain, his muscles. He's in Great Ormond Street Hospital. The doctors there think there is no further hope for him. Who are utterly determined, want to take him across to the United States of America, where they believe there is some hope that something could be done to improve his condition. It's a case that has caught the hearts of people all over the world. Even the Pope has said that he thinks that young Charlie should be able to be taken by his parents to have one last chance, perhaps, of life. And President Trump yesterday intervened to say that if he could do anything to help young Charlie Gard, he would do so. And yet, we have a whole series of court rulings in this country, all the way up to the Supreme Court, effectively prohibiting Charlie Gard's parents from taking him to the USA. And I want to ask you tonight the question: who should have ultimate responsibility over a child's life, the parents or the state? Well, joining me on the line is Lewis, and Lewis is a family member and a relative of Charlie Gard. Lewis, good evening.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello.
Yeah, I am Connie's cousin.
You're Connie's cousin, Connie being the mother of young Charlie Gard. Lewis, I mean, how has the last 10 months been for the family?
Yeah, the last 10 months have been very, very difficult for everyone involved, for all the family, and especially Connie and Chris, the parents. What's already a very difficult situation, you know, has been made worse, I think, in my opinion, by the state putting the whole family through torture. As I say, I'm Connie, the mother's cousin. I was there on the day that Charlie was born. He was born perfectly happy and healthy, then very quickly and sadly deteriorated, and then was admitted into Great Ormond Street Hospital, where he is currently, and where he is very stable. The last time that I saw Charlie, you know, I could see his stats. They were live on the bed next to him, and yeah, he's extremely very stable. And actually, the last time that I saw him, he even opened his eyes for me as well.
So you're determined as a family to take him to the USA with perhaps the hope, maybe it's a faint hope, I don't know, but perhaps the hope of some revolutionary treatment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you said in your intro there that you know, the parents believe that there is something out there for Charlie, but it's not just Connie and Chris, the parents, that believe that there's something there. There are medical professionals which believe that there's something that can help Charlie. There's a doctor that is willing to take Charlie and give him treatment, and the treatment is non-invasive. It will be given orally. We just can't understand why he isn't given that chance, but also why his parents can't decide what happens to Charlie.
And I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel as a family that, as I say, all the way up to the Supreme Court? How do you feel that you've been stopped from taking him to the States and doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very upsetting, but we're very strong as a family, and we all stand by Connie and Chris, and of course Charlie. And, you know, Connie and Chris have always said that while Charlie's still fighting, we're still fighting. And the whole family stand behind them. You know, I've seen Charlie constantly. I've seen him every week since the day that he was born. I've been there by the bedside, and, you know, it's an awful situation to be in. There's a chance that someone might be able to help their son, my cousin's baby, and the state have intervened. I mean, I'm sort of lost for words, really, as to why they can't be given that chance.
Well, Lewis, I think I have to say, I think in this case there are many many millions of people out there who feel this way. And even Pope Francis thinks that the parents should be allowed to do everything they can to try to help their son. And our thoughts are with you, with all of the family. And I want to thank you for being very brave and coming on and talking about what must be a very difficult family situation. And please pass on our best from everybody here at this station to Charlie's parents.
I will. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that was a very powerful interview with a close family member. But of course, there are some very major points of law here. And earlier on, we spoke to Aoife Daly, and she's a senior lecturer at the School of Law and Deputy Director of the European Children's Rights Unit at the University of Liverpool. And we asked her, who has the ultimate responsibility over a child's health?
Well, when it comes to medical treatment, before it can be provided to a child, a doctor has to, except in cases of emergency, get consent. And this consent is usually sought where, in the case of a child, from those with parental responsibility for the child, generally the parents, who are legally permitted to consent to treatment. Those who have parental responsibility basically have the rights, duties, powers and responsibilities that most parents have in respect of their children, and that's under the Children Act 1989. And in a great many situations, there will be no issues raised concerning the treatment of children, because usually a parent takes a sick child to a doctor, treatment options will be discussed, parents will consent to whatever is advised and discussed, and the child is then treated. So 99.9% of the time there will be no problems with consent. It'll be very straightforward, the medical treatment. The person with parental responsibility will just agree to it. Where the situation becomes more complex is where parents withhold consent to medical treatment. They don't want to agree to the treatment. Or in the situation of a child who's a bit older, if the child, him or herself, refuses to agree to the treatment. And in those circumstances, if they are serious enough, the protocol is, in a hospital, for example, permission will be sought from the courts, and the issue will fall to the courts to be resolved.
I also wanted to find out, when would medical professionals deem a parent is not fit to have this responsibility?
Where problems arise is where parents withhold consent to treatment in serious circumstances. So oftentimes those parents will think that they're acting in the best interests of their children, but the medical professionals will disagree. And if, for example, children need life-saving treatment, in the case of certain religions, are against blood transfusions, for example. So commonly cases arise when children need blood transfusions and parents disagree to it. It could be very serious, life-threatening perhaps, and in those kinds of cases, the medical professionals may go to the courts to ask the court to determine the matter.
And finally, we asked, is there any way that the court decision in the Charlie Gard case could be overturned if new evidence came to light and if Charlie was still alive?
All of these cases are determined in accordance with the principle of the welfare of the child as the paramount consideration, or the best interest of the child, it's sometimes called as well, and that's also under the Children Act 1989. So the court has already looked at all the evidence, and one has to feel incredible a sense of pity for the parents in this sad situation. But the courts have already weighed up the evidence and looked at the benefits of this experimental treatment, even if it may prolong life. There will still possibly be an awful lot of significant suffering involved for the child. So although life is valued incredibly highly under the law, it's not life at all costs. Suffering has to be considered as well. And my understanding is that, sadly, this child's situation is one of terminal illness, he'll not recover from it, it's highly unlikely that anything will change, and the determination on the matter of the best interest of the child, on the welfare of the child, has already been made. And in some cases, for example, there was Hannah Jones about 10 years ago, was a young girl who needed a heart, or was being offered a heart transplant after years and years of terrible suffering. She did not want to consent to that, and ultimately she was allowed to make that decision for herself. But later her situation changed, her situation improved, and she actually went ahead and got that heart transplant. But very sadly in this case, it doesn't look like the situation will change, and the matter of being offered the treatment won't have a bearing on the determination that's already been made by the courts.
Well, thank you to Eva Daly, Senior Lecturer at the School of Law and Deputy Director of the European Children's Rights Unit at the University of Liverpool. So, as she says, parents have some rights, but I'm afraid, ultimately, it's the courts that do make these decisions. Now, just to be, as fair as I can about this, Lewis said that they had great hope of what might happen if young Charlie goes to the USA, although a US clinician said that his chances of securing meaningful brain recovery were vanishingly small. So it's not a particularly massive hope for the parents, but it is at least a hope. And I wonder, Maggie and Cobham, you're my first caller this evening. What do you make of what you've heard so far?
Hi, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm one of your biggest fans. Can I just say that I'm 64 years of age now, and when I was 27 years of age, I collapsed in the street. I had no feeling in my legs whatsoever, and I was rushed to a hospital. I've been told not to mention the hospital, and they told me that if they didn't keep me in there and operate on my back, I would never walk again. And I said to them, well, look, hang on a sec, there's nothing else that I could do to, well, if you don't do what we say, we feel that you'll never walk, but if you're adamant of going back home, we think you're going to be crippled for about 2 years lying on your back. So actually I was laid up for about 18 months, but gradually I got my legs working as if I was riding a bicycle by doing that motion in the air.
So, Maggie, you proved them all wrong then, Maggie, yeah?
I did prove them wrong, Nigel, and doctors are not always right.
No.
And over the years, going to have seeing chiropractors and osteopaths, they all said to me I did the right decision by not having my spine cut and fused back together, because gradually, the discs, the bug would weaken and I would become sort of bended over.
But Maggie, this case, this young lad is in a very bad way, and even if he goes to America, the chances are perhaps he won't get better, but there is an opportunity. Do you think, Maggie, in your view, should it be the right of Charlie Gard's parents to make that decision, or the doctors and the courts?
I think absolutely, with my heart, I think it's the parents' right, because they will never, ever know. They fought so hard, and if there's any glimmer of hope where that child's not going to suffer by actually going on the journey, I think that they should be given that right, because...
Maggie, thank you. Maggie, thank you. Maggie, thank you ever so much for your testimony. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Strasbourg. It's 7:17. Well, this is by no means the first time in which doctors in the UK have effectively said you cannot take your child outside of it for treatment. And a case that I remember from just a few short years ago was 5-year-old Aisha King. He had a brain tumour. He was in Southampton Hospital. He had an operation to have the tumour removed. And his parents, Brett and Nagame, saw there was a revolutionary new treatment available in Europe. It's called proto-beam treatment, which, by the way, will be available in this country from next year. But they saw this was available, and so they took him out of the hospital and flew him to Spain, at which the UK government issued a European arrest warrant for the parents of young Aisha, and they were taken into a Spanish prison and kept there for more than 24 hours. Ultimately, they were allowed to continue with their journey, and I'm very pleased to tell all of you that Aisha King is now free of cancer. So I know I'm not suggesting for one moment that there's any short, easy solution in the case of Charlie Gard. There may not be. You know, I'm not qualified to comment on that, but I do begin to think that perhaps the state is being a little bit too heavy-handed here. Now, my next caller is Daniel in Plymouth. Daniel, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Good. Well, thank you for coming on the show, because I understand that you've been through some pretty awful experiences with a sick child.
I have, yeah. My little boy was born in 2008. He was born with a serious complex heart condition. He was perfectly normal other than that. Cut a long story short, he underwent an open heart surgery and it went terribly wrong. Suffered severe brain damage, and we were told that to expect the worst. He spent almost 2 weeks in intensive care. So we had to make a decision in the end for the best interest of him. But it turned out that he would kind of make that decision on his own anyway. So really, we were just there to sort of see it through, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
So you understand exactly what these parents are going through, Daniel?
I do. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's no easy answer to it, really, Nigel. It's a case of having been there myself, you want to believe that there is hope and that there is a miracle, because it's that little boy laying there, you know. And yes. when I see things like this, it really does bring it all back to me. And but at the same time, if the medical advice is there, you know, there's absolutely no way that anything can be done. This new treatment in America won't work. Then I think, like we had to, I think you just got to sort of kind of accept it and let nature take its course. You know, I mean, it's a difficult one. No easy. Oh answer.
No, it's. I mean, listen, I'm huge sympathy for what the two of you have been through on this. I've been lucky. I've never had to face anything like that in my life. But I mean, Daniel, just imagine if you'd been in that position and you'd been told there was a chance, even if it was 0.5%, that if you'd taken your little boy overseas, you might have thought it was worth a shot. And is it right in those, I mean, you've been through this, but is it right in those circumstances that the doctors and the court and the state say you can't do that?
I think if there's, like you said, if that slight chance, then I think they should go for it. But the only problem that I find with that is, say they fly Charlie over and something goes wrong during the flight, they're miles from home, they're not on tarmac, and that's my only fear, my only worry is where he is, see things out and see how it goes, or, you know, traveling and things like that. You know, with all the stuff he's going to need to make the journey, it's in my heart, I think they should fight it and go for it. If they think that there's one chance, just do it, go for it.
Yeah, well, I think that's Daniel, how I feel about this. I think if I was in their shoes and there was that slight possibility, you know, and I just before you came on, you know, I talked about Aisha King, you know, the little boy who had a brain tumour and then was taken off, and he was then taken off, you know, for treatment that wasn't available in this country, but will be available for next year, and his parents got arrested for it. So all I'm saying, Daniel, is I completely understand that maybe there are times when parents in a situation like this have an unrealistic expectation, perhaps. Obviously, in the end, nearly everyone comes to accept it has to happen. But in this case, there is a glimmer of hope. And I'm with you. I'm with you. I think they should have a chance to go and pursue that. Daniel, absolutely. Thank you very, very much for telling us your own very sad story and sharing that with us. Thank you. Thank you. Well, a lot of texts and tweets obviously coming in on this. Nigel, the parents should have the decision as where there is life, there is hope. Charlie should have the chance of a cure, says Kathy. Well, I'm not sure whether it's a cure, Kathy, that's available in America, but perhaps just some amelioration. But others say if it was ruled by medical experts that poor Charlie wouldn't survive the flight, the parents are blinded by grief. It's all very sad. Little Charlie's parents should have every right to take him to the USA. Stuff red tape bureaucrats who think they rule the world, says Andrew. Well, actually, this is not actually red tape bureaucrats in this case. This is 5 separate doctors who gave testimony in court, and you know, this has been through a series of courts, and it's been all the way up to the Supreme Court in this country, and that is what the barrier is. You know, it would be against the law for them to take their child across to the USA. And having said that, of course, to take him to the USA, they need breathing equipment and all sorts of things to make that journey even possible. Michael in Medway, who should have the ultimate responsibility over a child's health? Should it be the parents?
Good evening,
should it be good evening? Or should it be the state, Michael? I mean, what do you think?
I think it's absolutely disgusting what's going on. How can the state decide whether your child lives or dies, or not even give them that hope? I've just been looking into it a bit more, and once again, it's our friends at the European Courts of Human Rights that have withheld it as well. So
Well, again, yeah, but I mean, if I'm actually looking at the European Court of Human Rights building as I'm doing this broadcast. It's about 350 yards away from where I am now. Yeah, I mean they opted not to overrule the UK courts. So, but to be fair about this, 3 UK courts have reached the same conclusion on this.
But why is it down to them? I mean, I just think it's disgusting, really. I mean, at the end of the day, they've got the funding.
Well,
even the president said to them that he'll help and do everything they can, and it's, why have they why haven't they?
Well, the one caveat, Michael, on that argument would be this, and it would be that there are certain circumstances in which a court has to judge that the parents are unfit to be responsible for a child because they won't make the right judgments. But nobody has suggested that these parents are unfit. So, Michael, you believe very strongly that it should be parental choice and responsibility here.
Yes, of course it is. Absolutely. End of the day, they brought him into this world. They should be able to have a choice. And even saying he can't even go home to die. I mean, what's all that about?
I think ultimately, I think ultimately that probably will happen in this case. But the impression I get is that the parents are fighting very, very hard to get this boy to the USA. And when you've got support, of a level of the President of the USA and Pope Francis, you've got some pretty serious support out there. Michael, thank you for your call. Thank you for your opinion. I have to say that it's the same one that I share. I think in this case, you've got responsible parents who have a glimmer of a hope, and I believe they should be allowed to pursue that dream. That's my view. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. We're talking about young Charlie Gard, the 10-month-old boy with a very rare genetic condition, and whether his parents should be allowed to take him to the USA for some treatment that might just help. So who should have responsibility, the parents or the state? And that's the question that I'm asking and we're debating. We've had powerful testimony already in this hour from a family member and from a parent who was in a very similar position. As I've said before the break, my view is that actually the state here is being too overweening and overburdening, and if there is just a tiny possibility, the parents should be allowed to pursue it. But on a lighter note, here in Strasbourg this morning, when the session began at 9 o'clock, in walked President Jean-Claude Juncker, of course the man who's in charge of the European Commission, and it was to be a debate concluding Malta's 6th-month presidency of the Union, and the Maltese president was here too. And Juncker got up to speak, and out of 751 members of the European Parliament, the number that came to hear the Maltese PM and the boss of the European Commission was about 30. And Juncker, clearly in somewhat ratty mood, said it was ridiculous, totally ridiculous. He said the Parliament had proved that it was not serious and that he wouldn't bother to come back if this is the level of respect that was going to be shown. And that led to the President of the Parliament, Mr. Tajani, reacting furiously and saying that it's not your job to criticise the members of Parliament. Well, I think, quite possibly, this is all my fault. It's all my fault because, as you know, I was stuck last night in Amsterdam. My flight in was late. I was supposed to be in Strasbourg yesterday evening. I was supposed to be in that debate this morning. And a couple of times over the last year or so, when Juncker walks in, he comes up, despite the fact we have totally different views, he comes up and shakes my hand and says, "Nigel, Thank goodness you're here. You're the only bloke in this Parliament I can have a proper debate with. So it could be he was really upset not to see me, and that's why he lost his rag. Who's to say? Who's to say? On a more serious note, German authorities tonight announcing that there are now 24,000 people living in Germany who have links to or who are suspected jihadi terrorists, and they've admitted that hundreds of potential jihadis have entered Germany over the course of the last couple of years. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it is the Merkel madness. And I saw today that the UNHCR, United Nations, are saying that now over 70% of those who are coming into Italy on a daily basis would never qualify for refugee status in the first place. I haven't changed my views on this one little bit. What we are doing, or what Europe is doing, is absolutely crazy and is imperiling their future. But back to Charlie Gard, back to his parents, back to the desire of that family to take little Charlie off to the USA to give him treatment, which may or may not be successful, but that is what they want to do, and the British judicial system, and indeed medical system, is preventing them from doing so. And I'm going to ask Patricia in Dollis Hill how she feels about this.
Well, I agree. I agree with the last caller. You know, absolutely. Yep. You know, I think they should take their child to America. They've got a fantastic opportunity. And you've got the president is helping them. You know, I mean, who can you have bigger than the president of the United States? He will help them, you know, and he said this. And to throw
yes, he has.
Away is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the only, you know, thing I would measure that with is, and I'm just going to repeat the point that was made by a US clinician, that the chances of securing meaningful brain recovery were vanishingly small. But hey, you know, sometimes I guess doctors are wrong. But
they are
I mean,
wrong
what?
At times.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, Patricia,
I've seen this. I've seen doctors being wrong with my uncle when he had an accident where he didn't actually have it. Somebody else, 2 other men caused it, and then he was hit on the head at work. And I've seen what can happen, you know, and he was seriously injured. And they said that his chances were very slim of recovering, and they told my mother and myself, and we had to go to hospital at Ashford with him, you know, near the airport.
Well, it can happen. It can happen. But what's happened in our country? I mean, you know, we always talked about, didn't we? It's a free country. We live in the UK. We're free to make our own decisions. We don't have a sort of overburdening state making all our decisions. Has the state now got too much power, Patricia?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. They shouldn't. I don't agree with the courts interfering with parents, what they want to do with their child. I don't have children, but it's completely wrong. They should not interfere.
Patricia, you couldn't be clearer. Thank you very much indeed. Linda says on Facebook, definitely parents should have the final word about their child. If they take him to the USA and it doesn't work out, then at least they'll be at peace knowing they tried everything possible. Gordon says, what do they know that doctors don't? Why make the poor kids suffer? It's a fair point, Gordon. There is quite a debate about whether Charlie Gard is in pain or not. The debate on that appears to be somewhat inconclusive at this stage, but it is a very valid point to raise. My son-in-law was told his mother only had a matter of hours to live. That was 2 years ago. She's still here, so doctors can be wrong. Sean says, I can't imagine as a parent having to hear that you can't do everything to save your child's life. Well, Sean, that's pretty much what Pope Francis said when he got involved in this. And John said, I think this is a battle between who can have overall authority over children, the parents or the government. And Irene says, you have to know in your heart that you tried everything. And I think, isn't that what Lewis was saying at the top of the hour? That is, you know, the family want to try absolutely everything, and they're being stopped from doing so. Jane in Chatham, good evening. How do you feel about this case?
Hello, Nigel. Pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
Well, basically, initially, over little Charlie Gard, I thought maybe the courts had made the right decision, and then it then came to me, I want to share a story with you that happened to my mum. When my mum was 52, she had 2 brain hemorrhages, one after the other, and she was in a top London neurological hospital. And we were more or less told, you know, usually with that particular brain hemorrhage, somebody either just drops dead, or if they do come round, they're going to be a cabbage. So we, my brother and I at the time, were hoping for the best, really, that she faded, because we couldn't bear to think of her ending up a cabbage. But anyway, eventually, she was in a coma for 6 weeks, and eventually, with me keep talking to her, etc., she did come round. So, to cut a long story short, 6 months later, when we took her back to this top London hospital to see the consultant, his face was an absolute picture, because my mum had had this very bad brain bleed, and she'd come through it totally unscathed, with no paralysis or anything. And the words of the consultant to my brother and I was, if you never believed in miracles before, your mother is a walking miracle.
That's a nice story. That's a very nice story.
Now, furthermore, that's even nicer is that was 52 years old she was when she was on her deathbed. She then has only just not long passed now at the age of 86. So she had all those years.
Yeah,
so
that's a very happy story, Jane. But here we've got 2 parents, grieving parents, a little 10-month-old boy who every top medical expert in Britain says there's nothing that can be done for him, and yet they're determined to have this one last go. I mean, is it possible that all these doctors and all of our courts are wrong?
Well, I say it in a word. After seeing what happened to Mum and the shock on those consultants' faces, I would say there is a chance. They should give the little boy a chance. And Donald Trump, well done him for intervening, and they should give him a chance. And my last word on it is that, yes, they can be wrong. They think they know, and they do know loads, but there's certain things about the human body and the brain that simply is still a mystery to them.
Yeah. No, Jane, terrific call and a really happy tale. Karen in Carshalton, do you think these parents should take their child across the Atlantic, or are they just hoping against hope that a miracle can happen?
But I personally think that they should be taking their child, and I support them in every way. But my concern is that if I've got a sick child that needs to go to Great Ormond Street, and basically it's a very high-profile case, and I'm told there are no beds because this child is taking up a bed, I would be devastated.
So you think one of the reasons he should be allowed to go is it will free up a critical bed?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think they should have turned off the life support. I mean, I'm a nurse of 30 years. And I totally agree with what the parents want, but because they're restricting them from doing what they want to do, they are taking up a bed, a critical bed.
Karen, I have to confess, I hadn't even thought about that angle. It's a very interesting point. So anyway, the argument is the parents should be free to do whatever they can, their last-ditch attempt, and in doing so, they free that bed up for somebody else that perhaps can be saved. Karen, I thank you very much indeed for that call and very different way of looking at this. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 7:45. The Charlie Gard case is one of the most difficult, one of the most complex, and one of the most emotive cases I think we've seen for a very, very long time. I mean, it has to be for Pope Francis to get involved, for President Donald Trump to get involved. And, you know, on the one side, you've got medical experts appearing in the highest courts in our land and the judges themselves upholding that medical evidence that there is no chance and no hope for little Charlie Gard, and that actually going to America could, in fact, prolong, as they see it, his suffering. But on the other, you've got the idea that parents should be able to make this decision to give this little boy, as they see it, one last hope. So far, the majority of you very much come down on the question of who should have ultimate responsibility over a child's life. And you come down, most of you, in favour of the parents and not the state. Josh in Ealing, which side of this argument do you come down on? Hello?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, hi, Nigel.
Yes.
Please
Josh.
hold.
Oh, dear. Josh in Ealing, we're having real we're having real trouble with Josh and Ealing. We're going to go to Andy and Dagenham. Andy, on which side of this debate do you come down on?
Well, you've got to go with the parents. You've got to allow them. I mean, at the end of the day, they've gone out. They know the kids well, ill. They've gone out and raised 1.4 million. I know. You've got Trump that's all offered to bring the child over to America. And they're not allowing him. They're not allowing him to go home.
What's gone wrong, Andy? Is it our doctors not seeing sense? Our courts not seeing sense? I mean,
at the end of the day, surely, if that child's destiny is to die through this illness, why should a man or a woman turn a machine off to allow it? If his destiny is to die through this, then allow him to go over to America and have the chance.
Yeah.
You know, well, Andy, you've got these people. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got people in America, in whatever court it was for the human rights, probably don't even live in this country, and they've decided this kid's fate, right? You've got, if they're going to do this, they've got to legalise euthanasia in this country. If they're going to be allowed to do this, they've got to legalise this.
That's not a route. That's not a route, Andy, I want to see us go down, I have to say, because I feel it's so potentially open to abuse. And, Andy, thank you for your call. And Andy makes a really good point, which is so determined are these parents and this family, and one of them we heard from Lewis earlier, so determined are these people that they've actually managed to raise £1.4 million to try and get little Charlie treatment. It is the most unbelievable, staggering effort they've made. Can you just put yourself in their position right now? I mean, they've tried everything they can, and they're being stopped by British doctors and British courts from having a go. I have to say, I can scarcely believe it. Now, Josh in Ealing is back, and I think his phone's now going to work.
Yeah, hi, Nigel. Hi there.
Hello. So which side, Josh, which side of this argument do you come down on? Are the parents right to want to do this or not?
The thing is that there's a lot of noise surrounding this issue at the moment, and there's a lot of people which are referring to the President of the United States and the Pope and all these big figures saying that they would help and support Charlie Gard going over to the States or elsewhere for treatment. But I think it's a little bit binary, this debate, as to, I hear a lot of callers saying, you know, they're very much in favour of the parents having the full rights. Others very much in the minority, by the sounds of it, saying that they would back the medical profession to make the call. I mean, I'm a father of a 6-month-old boy, and touch wood, thank God he's very healthy and he's growing very well and whatnot. But I couldn't possibly put myself in the shoes of the parents or indeed the medical professionals, right? I mean, people can't paint these doctors and nurses or whoever's dealing with Charlie as being somehow devoid of emotion and not wanting the best for the child. I think that's something that a lot of people are forgetting here. You know, these guys and women are trained for years looking after children, and the Great Ormond Street Hospital is one of the best institutions that we've got. They are the top of their profession. So,
well, you're quite, Josh, you're quite right, because I've more. You know, we've had lots of stories, Josh, tonight from callers ringing in saying that amazing things have happened to their mother and relatives of theirs, and the point gets made that doctors are not always right, but doctors are normally right, Josh. That would be fair to say, wouldn't it?
I would say so, but then if there are any other reports or feelings or other medical professions and suggesting that there might be an alternative treatment, then as a parent, it's only natural to, you know, hope for that treatment to work.
Yes. And there will be cases, Josh. There will be cases. There will be cases when the parents have totally unrealistic expectations, and this expectation, going to America, getting this new treatment. I mean, they know it's a tiny, tiny amount of odds that any significant improvement of any kind can happen, but they want to give it a go. But no, Josh, you made a very powerful point. That we're not here to slag off doctors. Doctors can be wrong, but generally doctors are right, and generally doctors do a great job. It's just that in this case, it's not really with doctors I'm having a go at, it's the courts I'm having a go at. Why has the state got so much power over parents? And Josh, that's really the point that I'm, debating, but I certainly made my mind up on it. Josh, thank you very much for making that point. Jackie in Putney. Jackie, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How lovely to speak to you. Unfortunately, it's under these very sad circumstances. I do know Connie and Chris.
You do? Okay.
Yes, I do. And I absolutely 100% think that it's disgraceful the way their parental rights have been taken away. And no, doctors aren't always right. And I feel that they should have, a long time ago, instead of putting Connie and Chris through this hell of going through court after court, and I mean hell, they should have been allowed to take Charlie to the United States. I know there's only a little bit of hope, but if they'd have just let them go, he could have maybe had the treatment by now. This isn't a backstreet doctor we're talking about in the state. And
Jackie, I mean, you know this couple. I mean, they do, given that they've been through all these court cases, given, and it was Andy earlier on that raised this point, given that they've raised £1.4 million, they sound like the most incredibly determined people.
They really are. And, I mean, Connie's has spent absolute hour after hour after hour, looking up about the mitochondrial depletion disease. Yes. And, she's found this doctor. She's found people in America. She's gone all over the world looking on the internet. She went to Spain. And she has actually been treated very badly, I feel, very, very badly. And I absolutely think she should go to the States. And I'm very, very pleased with Donald Trump for what he's done. And yes, you know him. If you can put any more power behind it, please do.
Well, but actually, to be honest with you, Jackie, in terms of if you think they should be allowed to take little Charlie over to America, Trump can say he can offer to help, and I'm sure there are ways in which he can. But ultimately, this is about UK law. That is the point, Jackie. It's UK law, and we've been all the way up to the Supreme Court. So there would need to be some major shift in UK law to allow little Charlie to go, and that would mean that there'd need to be at least some testimony from the medical profession to say, look, he should be given the opportunity. Perhaps the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, could voice an opinion. But however much Trump wants to help, it isn't going to happen in a hurry. Jackie, I thank you very much indeed for coming on and for talking about your friends Connie and Chris and what they've been going through. I'm asked, why can't the treatment be flown from the USA and given to the child here? Mark asked us that. Well, actually, it is a new treatment that's taken as oral medication. Theoretically, it could be taken here, but there's nobody here in this country who would actually understand anything about that drug or has ever seen it before. It's pretty experimental in America. It's not been heard of at all here. And I think medically that answers the question, though I would accept that, I'm not a medical expert on this. Well, look, it's been an amazing debate that we've had this evening on this subject with some very, very good testimony. We've had family and friends of Charlie Gard on the phone to us this evening, people who've seen all sorts of incredible miracles, and I want to repeat the point. I'm not here trying to attack the medical profession in this country. They are doing absolutely their best job. But just put yourself in the position of those poor parents. Most of us never have to live through an experience like this. And if they're not allowed to go to the USA, they will never know whether this treatment might have made just a little bit of a difference. And I think in these circumstances, we're being very, very cruel to them. And I don't believe the courts should have that much power over parents of sound mind. I really, really don't. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Hard Brexit means people fleeing the UK. Well, so said the note in Jeremy Hunt's